This week on the Flourish Feed podcast, I sat down with theater maker and master coach Adam Lazarus, trained by the legendary clown master Philippe Gaudier and now shaping how leaders and storytellers captivate their audiences worldwide. If you've ever wondered how to cut through the noise and hold people spellbound, whether you're on stage, on Zoom, or around the dinner table, this conversation is your playbook. Before we get to that, however, let's get to know Adam a little bit. Adam Lazarus is an internationally acclaimed instructor and corporate speech consultant celebrated for helping leaders, artists, and visionaries bring their messages to life with clarity, confidence, and impact. Blending his award-winning theater background with executive coaching, Adam transforms the way people communicate, whether in the boardroom, on film sets, or on world-class stages. Trained at the legendary L'École Philippe Gaudier in Paris, he brings the artistry of performance into leadership, teaching clients to tap into their authentic voice and command attention with presence and purpose. He teaches at the University of Toronto and the National Theatre School of Canada and has coached executives, creatives, and thought leaders at institutions such as the Wharton School, Columbia University, Robin School of Business, and McMaster University, as well as yours truly. His client list spans the globe, including Amex, FedEx, Porsche, Molson Coors, TD Insurance, TED Talks, Canada Goose, Hershey's, Rogers, and the Vancouver Olympic Committee. From captivating a packed theater to inspiring the corporate boardroom, he's driven by one mission: helping people connect, persuade, and thrive through the power of attention. Adam Lazarus, welcome to the Flourish Feed podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and a treat to be here.
It's a pleasure and a treat to have you. So when we look back over your career and you look at all the things you do now, what have all these experiences, clowning with Philippe Gaudier and now public speaking coaching at the highest levels, what have these experiences taught you about the nature of attention itself?
What a great question. I think that before I answer that question, I thought, well, what do I do to grab your attention or the listener's attention right off the bat? Shouldn't I have something so that I'm practicing what I preach? So I thought I should answer your question first by telling a joke. Because right now you see me with facial hair, and my headshots are without facial hair. So I wasn't sure if I'd like having facial hair, but then it grew on me. See, I would say I caught your attention.
You did. You got my attention because you were pretty stoic in the beginning of that joke, and then there it was.
I know, and then I'm a dad. There was my dad joke right there. But now let's talk about attention. I think whether good or bad, attention is this very finite aspect that we have in our lives, and if we're trying to get it from other people, then we should care about what we're talking about, and we should really authentically try to connect. So I think everything that I've learned in my life has given me this grounding to walk into rooms and see who's in front of me and very quickly know what they need from me in terms of energy. That's an abstract for sure, but it's one of the more challenging things to teach. How do you teach someone to have the right energy to walk into a room? And it's not about me, it's about you and what you need in order to receive my message. I feel like I am in service of every room that I walk into. That has helped me a lot as I've grown up, as I've crested certain decades, that I am here to help. And I repeat that to myself before I start any seminar or one-on-one, or even if I'm doing a performance in a play, I am here to help. And whether that's to help by entertainment, or whether that's to help by offering skills, or help somebody overcome nerves or challenges, or to be the most dynamic and impactful, I think I'm always in service. No one was lying about that, or the Buddha was not lying about that.
There's a few things that you've already said that I want to dive into. One of them was the concept that you said it's finite, which I can buy, because if our it's true. I mean, our attention probably is finite. There's only so much that we can offer of our attention. But the other thing that you said too was that you get what you give, and that your approach to receiving attention is first to offer it. So there's kind of a vulnerability in that. And where did you first learn that, and how do you practice it even besides when you walk into a room to coach?
Yeah. You made me feel like I might want to change the word finite to, I always answer your questions by answering something else and then I question.
That's okay.
the idea of finite, maybe I want to change it to say that people often feel like their attention is finite, so they're like, bring it. You know, you entertain me, or you better teach me, or this better be worth it. This 14-second video, this, you know, meme, it better be good or I swipe, right?
So true. Yeah.
You know, people are on their phones, they're tired, they're bored, they're distracted. So how do we come in and grab their attention so that it feels infinite? No, I want to change it to say, then we can have this moment together and it be impactful. So when did I first learn it? I think theater training, to be honest, is probably the number one. So you come on the stage, you paid money to come see a big show. I better be good. I better be entertaining, or I better be vulnerable, or I better be open, or I better tell the story well. I studied under this man named Philippe Gaulier, and I will give a lot of credit to that training, which was very challenging. And exercises would be things like, come on the stage and be funny. Go. And that's it. You have no other support besides your instinct to be funny. And within 7 seconds, if you're not good, he would kick you off the stage, and that was your day. And then you would watch other people struggle, and some would succeed, some would fail. But this idea that when we're told we have to do something, all of these old impulses and instincts will come up, like, I push too hard, I don't believe in myself, I play small, I'm too aggressive, that's pushing too hard, I guess. And then eventually something clicks where you don't mind anymore. You actually look at the audience, you make an offer, you listen to what's being received once you make whatever offer you're making, and then you start getting in a flow with your audience. And it's
Cool.
amazing.
That's very deep, because you just touched on self-limiting beliefs a little bit, because, you know, like you have to work through those things. And it's funny how that 7 seconds is so close to the 14 seconds that is, you know, how long people might take before they swipe something on a social media feed. And yet part of me wants to be like, no, I don't want attention to be like that. I want attention to be extended. I want to get into that flow zone with you where time disappears and the gift of attention between the two of us is effortless. And that sounds like maybe the goal of that training.
I think so.
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe you were able to stay.
And I always felt like in training, it never gets harder than here. So maybe that's why it's half the time or something. Yeah, that was ruthless. You know, being told by a teacher, you're boring, you're not dynamic, nobody wants to listen to you, get off the stage. I do not coach like that. If anyone is interested in reaching, not coach like that.
He does not coach like
No
Philippe.
way. It's brutal. But there is something in also the humor of calling something out. Like, this isn't good. It's not working. I think your audience, they're going to want something a little bit more, a startling statement. They want to hear some facts, where you're coming from. What do you got? Or this one, they're more storytelling based. Let's go into an interesting story. And then I think the attention does become finite. If we feel like we're connecting, this is nothing new, but if we feel like we're connecting with the person in front of us, if we feel like we see ourselves, or they're saying a thing that we've always wanted to hear in a way,
time can disappear.
Time can disappear. And I feel so strange saying this, because I guess it is a little ego that I say it, but I will have people come up to me and say, that 3 hours flew by. I can't believe that was 3 hours. And sometimes I feel that is one of the highest compliment, that, you know, people will hire me and say, are you sure 3 hours is a long time? I'm like, it's nothing. It's nothing, I promise you, because we're going to be learning. People are going to be doing. They're not just sitting back witnessing. They feel part of the experience.
So when we're looking at a 3-hour event like that, or even a 1 hour keynote, or maybe even just a conversation where you're in a small group or one-on-one, we live in this endless distraction, this age of so many different things going on around us, our phones going off and so forth. And our brains are kind of attuned to that. So in your view then, when you're successful at connecting with an audience, what's the difference between grabbing attention and earning it?
That's such an interesting distinction, isn't it? I think
because, I mean, you talked about Philippe earlier, and he would kick you off probably for doing something cheap, like some kind of some kind of thing that was about grabbing as opposed to earning. And I think there's so many things that we're fighting against in this world of distraction that we all feel like we have to grab attention. What's the distinction for you?
Yeah. Part of me feels like, and I will renege what I'm saying too, or not believe it maybe later, but sometimes I think that we need to grab it right off the top, just to wake ourselves up or pull ourselves out of what we've been doing before that distraction. I love that you say it can't be cheap, because it can't be. So, me telling that joke, I don't know, it's kind of humorous. It's a little vulnerable because it's a really bad joke as well.
Yeah.
And that's where I think we start cresting into earning it, that there's a desire for authentic connection based on the people that are in the room. I always talk about these 3 questions: what's the purpose, the key message, and who's the audience of any communication I'm having. So the purpose is, what are we talking about? It's to inform, it's to persuade, it's to entertain. The key message is, how do I want you to feel at the end? So I want you to feel inspired, I want you to feel nervous, I want you to feel engaged, I want you to feel like we're going to succeed as a company, or this relationship is the best relationship that's ever existed. And then finally, the audience. Who are they? And if I know them, because I've done my research, I change that attention grabber or an attention earning moment. And if I don't know them, I also change it to more of a question period or to get to know them. So we're in the space together. I try to make it like it's not me versus you ever. Even if I'm the only one talking, I am listening the whole time. Can I say one more thing about that?
100%.
It's sort of this weird dark arts of public speaking that if you're ever on a Zoom call with, 100 people, 50 people, however many people, and their cameras are off, and you just see the letters of those names. And I'm sure you've experienced that. The listeners have.
100%.
You have to pretend that they're on the other side going, yeah, and taking notes. And then my delivery changes too. Like I'll say things like, you know what I mean, and nobody's saying anything back.
And you're just speaking into the darkness.
It. But it's so funny you say that. Like that's one thought of, I'm speaking into the darkness. It's annoying. And people will say that. Pretend you're not speaking into the darkness. And people are on the other end going, yeah, oh my gosh, totally. Because I bet you they are. Or at least one person is.
Yes. Yeah, of course they are. And the result of that performance is going to be immensely different if you can suspend your disbelief for a moment to create that other side for yourself, because you're going to have fun and you're going to be engaged instead of having this awareness, or what do you call it? Like self-consciousness, I think is part of that, right? You want to drop the self-consciousness to gain the connection. So when it comes to having attention and then keeping it alive to use it well. I mean, you've trained actors and students and executives. What's the through line between a performance that thrives on stage and also thrives in the boardroom? Is there I think you just gave us some clues about those 3 factors but what's consistent? What's common?
Yeah. I'm recalling this note when we were training as an actor. I always want to see the actor beneath the character. Character mask is too strong, I think about the writer, or I think about the stage, the director, or I think about the design. The design of, you should always be peeking through, and your eyes are always having a little bit of fun. So le jeu, the game, the pleasure of being able to breathe life into the ghost of a character or a script. Why do I say that? How does that relate to the boardroom? Is you are not trying to be an actor where you are somebody else. So I don't put the mask of somebody else on. Just as you shouldn't put the mask of like, I am CEO. CEO talks like this. Good speakers talk like this. Or whatever. Like, you have to be yourself. And if I see you engaging with your own material with this pleasure and enthusiasm and belief that what I say is important, that what I say has an impact, that it can change lives, it can move mountains, then we're onto something. So often when I'm coaching people, just like actors will do, they'll have notes in their margins of like, what are my intentions through this section to affect the other person in the scene. So should executives, or so should anyone delivering a message. What is the point of this? The point of this is to show leadership to make my team feel safe. And it changes the way that we speak. And so that person needs to tap in with their own leadership, their own mode of making a room feel safe. And good leaders know how to do that. That's not a foreign concept to them to hear that. They're not like, that's weird. That's weird that you talk about being, I'm not saying emotional, like we weep, unless you want to weep. But
in which case, go for it.
It's just like, it is a little, I should be here. I know how to take care of a room, or I know how to command authority. I know how to inspire. And we turn that on without the self-consciousness that you were speaking.
Okay. That reminds me of something I heard you talk about last week when I had the pleasure of being in an audience when you were speaking to a group of us. And that was about the percentage of impact that verbal, vocal, and nonverbal have on the relaying of a message or on the way that the audience feels. That actually, I can't believe I didn't know that before, but would you share that with us? Because I think that speaks to the importance of being yourself in front of other people and that authenticity being valuable, even more so maybe than the content. So can you update us on what that study was about?
And what's amazing, Gillian, is that you are so good at all three and that it's somewhere in you as well. And so to hear the statistic, I think that you're riding it well. But anyway.
Thank you. It still blew my mind because I thought verbal would matter so much more than it does. And thank you for saying that. And I will give the credit to the people who trained us when we learned these things, because I guess we're at a young enough age that the impression that it left was longstanding. But what percent impact does verbal have?
So there's this study by a guy named Albert Mehrabian, who was a professor of psychology at UCLA in the 60s and 70s, and he wanted to understand the impact of communication on an audience. So he did some research, and he found that there are three things that we are impacted by in the audience: verbal communication, so what you say; vocal communication, how you say what you say; and then nonverbal communication, the nonverbal aspects of communication. And just listeners, think, what do you value? If you were to say verbal communication, what would that percentage be? Hold that number in your head, and then I'll tell you now, it's 7%.
I never thought it would be that low. I thought the content of what I'm saying would have to be so much more pressure on it than that, but it's only 7%. Sure.
You know, I think a few things. So the 7% has to be perfect, well thought out, well structured. Your email is 100%, anything written is 100% documentation. But other things are happening that make it feel more important. Again, the word is impact. I think we're trained to turn off this other 93% and be a little bored and wait for this 7%. So, the prompt or the encouragement is, imagine you can wield these other 93%. Imagine what kind of impact you can make. Even like a little thought.
Yes.
I want my audience to feel inspired, so I'm going to sound inspired. By the way, vocal is 38%, nonverbal is 55%. So, a podcast, I guess the nonverbal's not as much there. So those metrics change for sure. But
it does. But if it's a video podcast, we still have the body language working.
Exactly.
For us. Yes.
So, there's a lot of people who, when they get nervous, things come up. Their voice sounds like this when they're talking, they're asking questions. Or they have this vocal sound like, and for anyone laughing at home, if you relate to that, you sound like it doesn't matter. So the room feels like it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't really matter. Yeah. So taking that back to the CEO standing at the front who wants to inspire with leadership, there's so much more than just the words that person is saying, those margin notes about how they're saying it, and maybe some of your coaching and directing about how they comport themselves, how they're presenting themselves, have so much more value in the impact that it's going to have on the audience. Now I want to translate that. Well, I want to stay there for a minute, because that requires a certain sense of comfortability with yourself, to be yourself, to do those things, because you don't just want to put on another mask about, well, this is how I'm going to look inspiring and this is how I'm going to sound inspiring. You too have to find yourself. So what are some of the tips or exercises that you use when you're working with people to help them break down the facade maybe that they've set up for themselves, or those bad habits, like those. I know you have a phrase for some of those bad habits that you've called me on before. Ticks,
Whiskers?
or no, not ticks. What's that? Whiskers. Yes, whiskers. That's it. How do you break through those things so that people truly find, their own eyes through the mask, their own appeal?
My mother coined that word, whisker. I love it. Other people call it, what do they call it? Fillers. I like word whiskers. Word whiskers. It's cuter. Anyway, I think so. A word whisker, for those of you who don't know, would be like, kinda, sort of, so, actually, to be honest, things like that.
I do them. I know, because when I go through the podcast transcript and I try to pull out the fillers, I still have quite a few word whiskers, Adam. We need to work on them.
I'll do. Yeah. And I think it's okay. It's okay. When they become a barrier to communication and I can't hear anything but, I did it there. Like anything in training, I think your awareness is step number one, and then we can work on it. So I know that's such a broad technique, but it's true. That's the tip. Think of, if you want to get rid of word whiskers, become aware of them, hear them, and they will start to diminish, and then go silent. That's it. It's not such rocket science. I feel like when I train people, there's 100,000 things to work on, and every day, every communication, work on one. That's it. So today, I'm going to be aware of saying, and when I do, I'm going to stop myself. And I'm not going to berate myself if I do say because everyone on the planet has their own version of So if they go down a little bit, perfect. But this idea of becoming aware so we can wield it, I think is, when I say that about word whiskers, it's a microcosm for everything.
Everything. Sure.
Doing. You don't get stronger by thinking about getting stronger and reading a book on getting stronger. You have to hit the gym. Practice. You have to go through the pain of tearing the muscles before they rebuild.
They rebuild stronger. Sure. Yeah, thank you. So when it comes to the corporate presenter, or even just eventually I want to go down, not down, but over to the everyday conversation. But when it comes to the corporate presenter, just to catch us up on everything that we've talked about, the gift of attention and having people engaged with you. The reason why we care about this so much is because, as I mentioned to you before we started recording today, it's this 87-year-long study that says that positive social connection is the number one way that you can remain having a healthy, happy, well-lived existence. If you're going to have positive social connection, you obviously have to engage with people. In order to engage with people in a way that is truly satisfying, we want to be able to give and receive attention. So when I am this corporate CEO type person who is trying to inspire my audience and show leadership, how do I break through and be myself? How do we teach people to be themselves? Because then that becomes something that's just as easily done at the coffee shop or at the Thanksgiving table or what have you, to not feel made nervous by the social interaction.
Yeah, I love everything you just said. I believe a lot in coaches. I believe a lot in, as you're saying, community. We don't have to know how to do these things alone. So everyone take classes. Take classes with as many teachers as you can. And I think if I was to just impart wisdom that is outside classes, it takes all kinds on this planet. And you are amazing and unique. And for you, that is such a broad way of saying it. I'm going to try to say it better. Everyone lights up when they're in conversation with someone, whether it's their partner, their kids, their dog, their friends, when they just light up. And this idea of pleasure. This is when I studied with Philippe Collier, he talked about this idea of pleasure, which is not, it's a party. It means I believe in what I'm saying, and I think it has merit, and I want to say it. And so I will say it with a bit of passion or a bit of pleasure. And whether it's serious or fun, doesn't matter. And so this idea of when we're with people and we light up, this is what we want to transfer in front of the boardroom, appropriate to the environment.
Yes. Right.
And some people are really they're stoic and they don't move, but when they speak with passion, they're amazing. And other people, they're gregarious and they're amazing for that. So who are you at your most dynamic and impassioned? Where do you geek out Like when people are like, oh, that's too geeky. I love geeky. Go on about how you know every technical aspect of that owner's manual. I will listen.
Yes.
I love it.
Yes.
So
Because I like watching you. It's only 7% mattering what
that's
you're
it.
saying, right?
Yeah, and they're like, I'm not going to tell you about what we do at work because it's too boring. I'm like, tell me. I want to know everything. And then I think I'm a good listener, so I'm like, really, really, and I try and listen. And I'm also listening to the person beneath the words, as you're saying, that
Of course.
93%.
Yeah.
So that would be a tip. I know it's, philosophical, but what do you like talking about? That's step one.
Yeah, that's a totally
Yeah.
concrete idea. What do you take pleasure? And maybe you have to ask your closest 5 people around you is what do I talk about that causes me to light up? Because that might be something that's worth exploring to practice who that person is when they are
Yeah. Yeah.
engaging.
And then I do think there's a danger sometimes, or the best leaders, even though there's built in hierarchies, that I don't feel like you are talking down at me and berating me. And I think those leaders are tougher often, that I would rather
Mm.
them speak with a tone of, it depends on what they're talking about, but a tone of bringing people in and believing in their leadership and believing in everyone who's working with them. So
Mm.
why do I say that? Because I've worked with people frequently who are in a crisis moment within their organization and they berate down and they're like, why is everyone quitting? Well,
Right.
why do people feel unsafe?
Because,
Well, your
well,
empathy for them being upset and scared at this current moment within your organization, we have to put that in. They need to feel like you understand before they change. So, or before they follow any leadership. So sometimes that's when things are going well, we speak with command, we speak with authority, but then when things are not going so well, that won't serve you as well because I first need to feel like I'm being
yes.
supported before I will again put back on my hat and follow you. Yeah. What do you think?
Absolutely. That brings
Yeah.
us to that. Yeah. Well, that brings us to that very, very important relationship that happens between an audience and a spectator, and also happens between a CEO and the people that they're leading, which is this concept of trust. You're having to create trust through those 3 forms of communication using the medium of attention. So when it comes to attention, how does that translate for those organizations that are in crisis? I mean, you just talked about having to weave in a sense of empathy, but are there other parts of that leader's delivery or awareness that you typically remind them of that they've forgotten, that is a big part of the game, that is a big part of the pleasure? I mean, how do you weave pleasure into that moment that is
Yeah, so
crisis?
there's many things to respond to. So the idea of pleasure, I'll talk about that first. It's not, oh, I'm happy to deliver bad news. It's, I'm going to stand behind what I'm saying with conviction. So we can substitute pleasure for conviction if that's more understood. I was thinking about this idea of purpose, key message, and audience. And often I think when I ask that question of certain folks, they take the word key message and they're like, I want my audience to feel like I know what I'm talking about. And my response is,
Mm.
that's about you. The question is, how do you want
Mm-hmm.
your audience to feel? You want them to feel listened to. You want them to feel taken care of. You want them to feel safe. You want them to feel inspired. Whatever it is, it can't be about you. Let's assume we do like you. We do take you seriously. We do think you're a good leader. And now what about us? So I think that's one thing to change. How do you want your audience to feel? And the other thing that came up is I have this naive belief that if we can phrase things correctly, we can inspire anyone. Like everyone will understand us
Mm-hmm.
if we just say it correctly. So
Word
word
choice.
choice.
Is it word choice? It's word choice as well as
That's right.
delivery, though, right? It's the
Yeah.
whole
So that
package.
7% is really, I'm a writer and I believe a lot in it. And so there's a lot of writing done about this, but empathy before sales, empathy before the ask. Whereas the 2%, 3%, 10%, where you are correct in your feeling that you want to quit, that you're not happy here, that you feel like you're in crisis, that we've cut funding to this department and you're angry, and then I do understand that. And so these decisions have been made. I still support you. I still support you. Does that answer that question? I
100%.
have many other
It
thoughts,
does
but I'll
because
stop there.
No, keep going with the other thoughts, but it's a tricky situation, but it really does help to think of the idea of replacing pleasure with conviction, knowing that at a certain point when you've come through the dark moment or the difficult time, that we can get back to a more conventional form of inspiration. But at the moment, another word I might consider would be advocacy, right? There's somebody who's out there that is your fierce leader, that is not blaming you, but is rallying you. And there's probably a language and a physicality to that is slightly different than someone who's selling or inspiring.
I also wonder about information and how much information we give. When we're in these public forums where we're speaking, what is this fine balance of like what the room needs to know and what they want to know? I think everyone wants access to everything all the time. And it's like, well, you just don't, as leaders, we don't need to say all the information all the time. It's okay. I spoke about this in that meeting, the hypothetical question, like, what if the company folds in 2 years? Don't even go down that rabbit hole. It's a hypothetical. Why would you say that? Right now, this is what we're doing. Everything in our power in order to keep this organization flowing. And we believe in the team. We believe in the mission. But what if it folds in 2 years? Everything we are doing right now is focused on this moment so that we can continue to thrive. Even as leaders, and everyone in the organization knows, we're probably going to fold in 2 years.
Sure.
Do we have to say it?
But it doesn't help. Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think about that one? These are the conversations I love with leadership, where we're like in the weeds of like, what do we do? This is really complicated. Let's chat about what is the information that the room needs to hear right now.
It's interesting because it speaks to this. I like the distinction of what they want to hear versus what they need to hear. I guess I critique myself for being a little bit too much of a documentarian. I like to record all of the details. I like to sometimes report on too many details, but that's maybe me geeking out in some sense. It doesn't necessarily reflect what the other person needs to hear. It might reflect what I think I want to say because I'm placing too much emphasis on that 7%. And maybe I'm not giving myself enough credit for the other 93% about how the delivery is making them feel. So that's a really interesting distinction. When it comes to, I think you do a lot of teaching as well, next generation, younger people. And when it comes to your work with them on attention, whether it's for, children or maybe even your own kids or university age kids, if you were to design a kind of a curriculum about holding attention and being connected in flow with someone in the moment, what might be a principle that you would say is important? I don't want to say the most important principle. That's a lot of pressure, but what would be a principle that you might kind of wrap that around?
So good. I think, with our kids, so I have two kids, a 14-year-old and an almost 11-year-old. We never said, what do you want to be when you grow up? We always said, how do you want to help the world when you grow up? Or how do you want to contribute to the world when you grow up? And I thought, and that was quite deliberate. And then we get the answer of what they want to be, whatever that meant. But I'm going back to this idea of being in service of and helping people. I think as a teacher, again, I feel like it's ego, but it's quite a noble profession in that way. Like whatever nobility means, that I'm always trying to help and bring out the best in people. I have this philosophy, which I have taken from Philippe Gaulier, that I think is a good summary, that I will always start most classes with, whether it's public speaking or if I'm doing acting training. And I'm going to say them now. So the first one is pleasure. You have to enjoy doing what you're doing. And as we've said, this conviction it's not about a party. It's about, I believe in what I'm saying and I'm lit up about whatever we are doing. So that's pleasure. The second one is a French word, complicité. It's better in French than English. In English, complicity means to be in cahoots for a crime, but in French it means to connect. So this is for you, and I'm watching you nod, and I'm listening to how you're reacting. It's not about me up here alone. It's always in connection. I don't look at the ceiling. I don't look at the floor. I gain nothing except from the people that I'm talking to. The third one is authenticity. You are who you are, and you cannot be anybody but who you are. And my teacher Philippe would say, I'm so sorry about that for you, Adam. Of course he was joking.
He loved you. I'm sure he did.
um, and that's a tricky one, as I think that's sort of the journey of getting older too. I've talked about this with you, that I used to separate my art and corporate life a lot. And I felt like shy with my artistic friends to say I do this other thing in this other realm. And then for the corporate, I felt shy saying, by the way, sometimes I do these wild, wacky performances. And as I got older, I'm like, I am who I am. There's nothing else I can do.
Authentic me.
And
Yeah.
I've melded them together, and it's actually what has made everything stronger. It's made my art stronger. It's made my teaching and training stronger as well. So that's number 3, authenticity. And the fourth one and fifth one are they're a little bit more ethereal, but I love them. The idea of failure or flop. And so this idea that while we are communicating, if Mr. Flop, it's a clown term, comes onto your shoulder and says, stop doing that, nobody likes it. So you think of a bad clown doing this one act again and again. You're like, oh, it's so bad. And the bad clown says, Mr. Flop, I'm going to keep doing it. I'm just going to do it louder. And then we hate that clown even more. But the person who embraces Mr. Flop saying they need something a little different. And it's not that you change the language. It's you just have to change your attitude or your pace or the way that you're engaging the room. Even if you're like, all right, let's call a 1-minute break. I feel like we've been here for a long time. Everyone turn your cameras off. You say, thank you, Mr. Flop. Something's happening in the room. Let's change. Another way to look at Mr. Flop is to say, mistakes will happen. Who cares? Doesn't matter.
Yeah. We kind of live in a culture where we don't really love Mr. Flop, and we try to cover up Mr. Flop, but that seems like 20% really ought to be dedicated to the fact that failure is totally human and we learn from it, right?
Exactly. It's like,
yeah.
In preparation for this, I was looking over Ohtani and his rituals as a baseball player, and he takes notes on how he's doing all the time, and not only his successes and also his failures, and what can I learn from all of them all the time. And then one other thing about, I think, failure or flop is to make it mean something more in front of the room than it actually means. So your slide didn't go up and you go, sorry. No one cared. Nobody cared. So just moving on. I stuttered. I said, you said, no one cares. Just move on. Remember what you're here for. Remember the purpose, key message in your audience. So embrace Mr. Flop. Learn from it for sure. And then I think we don't need to make such a big deal of it. Or as a good friend once said to me, if you feel like you really tanked on a presentation or a performance, you have 10 minutes to berate yourself afterwards. Say whatever you want, and then it's over. Don't live in there. And that can be really tough for people because you just want to churn it over and over. You will learn nothing new. 10 minutes.
I got that same coaching from a CrossFit coach from Ben Bergeron back in 18 or 19. Same thing, had a terrible result in something, and that was the coaching feedback. You're allowed to be mad for 10 minutes. You can't bury it all together, but at the end of 10 minutes, if you don't move on, you're just indulging at that point.
It feels good. It's very attractive to go down that road, but it's not healthy. It is not healthy at all. Which leads to the last piece, number 5. Today I was good. Tomorrow I hope to go on. Today I was bad. Tomorrow I hope to go on. And this was a Philippe Gaulier philosophy, and I love it. Today I was good. Great. Pat yourself on the back, and then come back tomorrow, do the work. Today it was not good. It doesn't define me. Learn from it or take a few things that you want. Come back tomorrow, do the work. The idea is that we keep getting to come back tomorrow. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. And that applies not just for the corporate presentation or the keynote speech. That also applies to even people who might feel challenged by social situations where it's always about showing up and doing some reps, correcting my ums, becoming aware, asking questions, getting engaged. It is a journey, but obviously one that's well worth taking if you can find that pleasure and connection with people, which ultimately are the greatest sense of joy for sure. Yeah. I have one more question in closing, which actually it's related to all of that. And Maybe right now you might say something different than you might normal time, but it has to do with this concept of the moment of bliss, which I look at as the inverse of a pet peeve. So if a pet peeve is a very small thing that causes a disproportionately negative feeling, the moment of bliss is a very small thing that causes a disproportionately significant positive feeling for you. Where in your day, Adam Lazarus, do you seek your moment of bliss?
That is a great question. And actually, the word that I tripped on was seek. So seek or get, does it?
Seek, see, receive,
I love
notice.
Seek because it's like I'm trying.
Seek is very good. It's really good if you can, right? If you can make that a ritual to seek it. I thought it would be a baseball thing. That's why I mentioned. We'll get to that another time.
Oh my gosh, I was going to say my family. I'm happy that I went to family before baseball.
That's good. That's good. I'm proud of you.
I want to hear, I seek bliss with a moment of connection with my kids and my wife for sure. And when I can get, as my kids get older, something a little more than, good. Yeah, they're good.
The grunt.
So when they can open up a little bit and I can see them just comfortable talking to me. Which often will happen at baseball. We're a big baseball family and we've been going to every game possible. And so yesterday I went with my son. A few days ago I went with my wife. A few days before that I went with my daughter. So it's like me and them alone. And that's always awesome. We open up there. So I think, I also seek it in fitness. And I know that you would appreciate that. But there's something like,
I'm not just appreciating it again. I'm proud of that. Let's hear about this. Yes.
I like pushing myself. And maybe this is the Gen X in me where I see challenges and I'm like, I think I can do that. Then I throw myself in head first. I'm not really a nervous learner. And I think with fitness, I'm always learning. And I think my body changes as I get older. I broke my ankle last year. So this journey to recovery with this new body as well, and not giving into this thought of, well, it's over. So fitness is always challenging and it's very achievable, even if it's an hour walk, or my dog is another one. I always get bliss with my dog. So I think there's bliss everywhere, but connection with family.
But now you'll seek it.
Connection with family, and then, but fitness is one where I come up against myself often, and then I see myself come through the other side. Yeah. I'm sure you have a lot of philosophies.
Those are all. Well, I do, and I'm gathering them right from every single podcast guest. I ask this question, and I expect that at some point I'll try to see the pattern, and I'll try to see that they are related to somehow growth, or they're related to connection, or they're related to feeling like all of the serotonin and endorphins are at the peak of the way that you want to feel in any given day. And I think the ones that you mentioned, they sound like they are those moments where your neurochemistry somehow been stimulated by something very positive, whether it's the family member or physicality, which is great. We can always access it. We know that through physicality we can access it. One more question though on the kids is getting them to light up. That's you practicing your craft of knowing how to ask a question of somebody. So the kid has to be one of the toughest audiences for that, no? Like the teen, right? Yeah, when you get them to light up, you're like, hey, I'm good at this.
Exactly, and it's 1 in a million. It's 1 in a million. I know one day they're going to come back and be like, wow, I have cool parents.
Of course they will. Infinitely cool parents. Thank you so very much, Adam Lazarus. This has been an incredible pleasure, and I wish you the very best day.
Yeah, go Jays! Thank you, Gillian.
Go Jays!
The best, always.